So from my point of view, the majority of threats to most organizations are common sense issues. The problem is that common sense isn't that common, right? You can defeat 99% of this stuff actually remarkably cost effectively and easily. There is no 100% in security. If you have someone who wants to come after you enough and the nature of your business is interesting enough, there's always a new way. But for most people, yeah, this stuff is pretty much about the basics, I'd say.
I think for me, I was listening to James. I mean, James always makes security sound so fun. I mean, it's, not normal you go to a security presentation and you hear so many people laughing. I think it's great. But it is a serious subject, and I think where a lot of people tend to go wrong is they coming back to this whole understanding your business need and then buying the technology to fit it. We see a lot of people who come to us and say, I need encryption. I must have encryption. Well, why? Well, because I need to encrypt my data. Well, okay, well, what's your policy around encryption? How are you going to make sure that new machines that are added to the network are encrypted? How are you going to make sure replacement machines are encrypted? It's no good just buying, it's the feel-good factor of, I've spent some money and bought some encryption software. You have to think about the policies of how you're going to use it. So for me, really the key is looking around what is it you actually want to achieve and then working out how you're going to use technology to achieve it. If you talk to the security providers for cloud services, if you talk to the people who I referenced who've built data centers, they'll tell you that they've spent millions, tens of millions of pounds securing their network, far more than you'll ever spend. And at the end of the day, if someone really wanted your data, they'd just break in and take it. Or the security of your internet connection, you would have spent low thousands of pounds, and therefore it's really easy to attack. But you see, I always combat that, and I've got an objective view. I would always combat that and say, but the greater the prize, the more people are going to be going after it. So, if you're running a small business of 10 or 15 people, the time it's going to take for someone to actually penetrate, hack your network and steal your data is a lot of time, a lot of investment, and a lot of money. Whereas if they go after a larger cloud-based organisation, the prize is a lot greater. And I think you just have to work out in your own mind, what do you feel comfortable with? And if, the benefits of cloud services, and whether that be cost, resiliency, redundancy, performance, productivity, outweigh that fear, then it's a personal decision. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's just, at the end of the day, what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I think the right or wrong answer point is great, I think. You've got to deal with, the biggest challenge with cloud as a whole is people say cloud and go, right, how do you secure cloud? And you can't do that because it's like saying, how do you secure everything? You've got to deal with it in the specifics. So, for example, adopting a CRM solution like Salesforce, I can ask them lots of questions about the security implementation. They've got lots of controls I can use. I can add additional factors of authentication like certificates so that you have to have a username and password and be from a corporate managed device. I can do a lot to mitigate that risk you're talking about. In many regards, more effectively, both in cost and technical terms, than a small business would be able to do on their own. So I'd be quite comfortable with that. Whereas there are other providers where they just scare the hell out of me, and they're a serious step down from the security you would naturally get within your own business. So it's all about looking at the specifics of the data you're uploading, its sensitivity, its commercial value, the provider that you're working with, and trying to make a rationalized decision on whether it's right to migrate at this time. But when it comes to the most sensitive of corporate secrets, I, for example, would not yet be ready to put my Microsoft Active Directory with all my usernames and passwords into the cloud. So I think, I agree with Steve's starting point of always figure out what you need from a business perspective, plus having to factor in some of those awkward CEOs bringing in iPads. You have to look at people, process, and technology holistically. If you only look at one of those sections, you will fail to deliver security. You could spend millions and millions and millions on technology products and not do the basics of education to have your data just walk out the door because someone rang up and pretended to be a figure of authority. So you've got to look at each of those areas. Equally, take learning from the fact that people continue to do stupid things every single day. I still see thousands of instances of malware that is 9 years old that just is detected by every vendor, is patched against, and no one should get. being installed and run on people's systems in the UK every single day. 9 years. So you've got to look at this stuff holistically, people, process, and technology, to try and make it as hard as possible for cybercriminals.
I think as well, one of the key things for me is the whole wireless key thing. You know, you walk into an organisation and you say, can I use your wireless? Can I have the wireless key? They write it on a piece of paper, they give it to you, someone throws it in the bin. People don't think to shred it or destroy it. And, you know, a lot of this stuff is unintelligent. I mean, James told me about the many nights he spent scouring through people's bins, pulling out papers to retrieve corporate data. And, you know, once you've got the Wi-Fi key, you're outside the building, you're connected to the network, and you've got a chance to start looking around. And
Networks are Rolos.
Yeah.
I should stop saying that.
So I think people kind of look at all of the big picture stuff, they miss the common sense, the detail, the basic stuff, but it's the age-old problem. I mean, you know, everywhere you go, you see it.
So kind of the established best practice was go and kind of get best of breed for each individual area, buy the best thing that you can and plug it all in, and then get some smart people to come up with a way to connect it all together and log it and monitor it and so on. Which, you know, in theory is fantastic. But what I have found time and time again throughout the last 10 years is that people don't have the expertise, time, resources, and money to do that. And you end up with stuff sitting on the shelf, half configured. You end up with a hell of a lot of complexity. And ultimately, that complexity ends up being a bigger security risk through mismanagement and holes left open than what you gained in getting the most uber best thing. So I am much more of a fan of trying to narrow down and take a holistic kind of integrated approach. I'm not saying you can necessarily get to one vendor for everything, but a much, much smaller collection, because I think it's more commercially effective, and ultimately I think it's operationally effective to the degree you get better security. If you are a 100,000 user business and you have 1,000 people in your security team, maybe you'll want to do the opposite. So that tends to be my religion, but it depends on the circumstances, and things like cloud providers and MSPs are also changing that a little bit. So,
yeah, I think it's a balanced view. I mean, you know, you need to look at what it is you're going to achieve, and then look at what technology. Some people take the view that they want multiple layers of security. So, you know, one vendor supporting the gateway part, one vendor supporting the internal network, and one vendor supporting the mobile. The problem is with all of it is cost.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you've got a basic security environment, a lot of the big vendors, Sophos, McAfee, Symantec, have built suites of products to work together for small businesses that are designed to do that. And in reality, I mean, a lot of this stuff you've seen is, you know, it is real, it is out there, it is happening, and a lot of it is easy to protect, and most of it will be covered under a suite of products from a single vendor. So unless you've got real issues that you need to go out and protect, that you've got regulatory issues or you've got real sensitive data that you need to protect, multiple layers of security from different vendors would probably be right for you. But if you haven't, if you've just got a standard basic security requirements, you know, the suite, it comes back to the price, really.
Two things from a business perspective and a personal perspective, because of course we're all kind of part of the problem. Personal perspective, in particular, I would make sure you go away and look at the basics of password security. You know, do I have decent passwords? Do I reuse them on different websites of different kind of types and security levels? It's still amazingly popular for people to use password 1 and 2 and password 2012. Sometimes people walk out of the room at that point ashen. So, you know, make sure you've got that basics of password nailed, and just have a look at the configuration of your mobile device. Look at the free resources provided. Get online and check out with other vendors, because that's an area in pen tests at the moment I'm finding are left wide open when the rest of the network can be more locked down. From a business perspective, the most important thing you can do is ask the question and keep asking the question. Making sure that you've got the right level of investment in security, not too high, not too low, making sure that it's on people's minds, you know, and as a leader, making sure that people understand that you see it as important so it doesn't fall by the wayside. It isn't necessarily about spending money, it can be about conversations, asking questions and metrics.
And I think the other key thing for me, which I think really lacks in IT security, is web security. So you saw this stuff that, you know, is available from the web, and, you know, people automatically think of bad sites, and a great case study was when the government launched a website for small businesses, and they put a link on to a document that you could go and download, and someone infected the link that contained malware that infected the machine. So they're encouraging small businesses to come to this website and download this. And I think what generally happens with security, if you haven't got antivirus, and you go on the internet, you're going to get a virus in an hour, and your machine will be dead. If you don't have email security, you're going to get a load of spam, and you're going to see it in your email inbox, and people address that. The web security stuff is different because it manifests itself in a different way. So you could go onto a website, download some malware, and 4 days later you could be complaining your machine's running slow. And the two things don't join up. So for me, the big thing would be look at web security. Don't just think of it as content filtering, HR reporting, blocking people from going to certain sites. Think of it in terms of, you know, I've protected my desktop, my endpoint, I've protected my email, and now I'm going to make sure that I'm protected from that web. Because those are the key points for me to cover for any business.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you very much.